Yes, good afternoon, all of you. क्या हो गया आज खाना ज़्यादा खा लिया लग रहा है ब्रेक I think one assignment of case study was given, so we'll discuss that but later. So we'll start with the probity in governance. Ethics class 01 10 okay. मैंने बोला यार 01 कैसे हो क्या लिखना था probity in governance. Probity in governance. So what is the word probity represents? Probity represents dignity, uprightness. In other words, it represents the honesty and integrity in governance. In other words, it signifies ethical and moral governance. Which means in the today's parlance, it is a good governance. Okay, that we have the concept of good governance, and that's nothing but the probity. Probity is anything that is moral, ethical, good governance. So this word probity just used very generically that about the good governance. लिख दिया क्या इतना लिखिए अब नया टॉपिक लिखिए that is good governance that's the topic good governance. This word good is value loaded again. What is good in with respect to the governance? First we'll see that what is the difference between the government and governance. What is government and what is governance? Government is an institutional mechanism. Government is a institution. Whereas the governance is a process or yes, or mechanism. It's a static. It's more of a dynamic thing. Creating the institution and the values that the institution carry in delivery of the governance or in delivery of decision-making process, etc. Now, this governance can be a mal-governance or misgovernance, or it can be a good governance. So first we'll see what is mal-governance. Mal-governance or sometimes misgovernance, MIS. Mal-governance or misgovernance. In other words, it's a bad governance. Okay, to say it very bluntly, what is a bad governance? Now, first aspect of yes, what all will be included? Bad governance, kya hai? Opaque. Okay, good. Opaque. There is no transparency, no accountability. Inequality is a product of bad governance. Okay. Partiality, biased one, or public services. Okay. So first you say about the misuse of power. So all that is coming is from the misuse of power. Misuse of power. So these are the authoritarian types of government, dictatorial type of government, totalitarian governments, or simply corrupt government also, because the power is given with a specific mandate. The mandate is to welfare the people, but rather than the people, okay, if you see this relationship, that is government and the people. So power is given so that to work in the larger interest of public, rather than you are perpetuating your own self-interest. That is the misuse of power. इसी का extension है misappropriation of public fund. Misappropriation of public money. That is, government, people pay the tax, and people expect that there should be judicious use of resources, and not only the judicious use, but the use should be for the welfare of the people. But what it leads into. So sum total of this thing, misuse and appropriation, it's a corruption, nepotism, crony capitalism, any other kind of favoritism, or any other type of biased governance that it will result into. Corruption, nepotism, crony capitalism, favoritism, or biased one. Now this is the functioning that is rule, but this is happening because of there are structural problems in the system. The structural problems is there is a lack of transparency. Lack of transparency. It means that the decisions are opaque. And when the decision happens in a dark room and not open to the public, so obviously it gives a chance for misuse of power and misappropriation of fund. Okay, lack of transparency or opaque government, opacity in decision making, opaque decision making. Then next is accountability, weak accountability. Weak accountability. When they are not answerable, it results into no deterrence. Accountability means answerability. Not just answerability, when the answers are not satisfactory, there is a punitive action. Okay, that is an enforcement mechanism. And when the enforcement mechanism is weak, there is no deterrence. There is no deterrence means there is a more chance of misuse of power again. Okay, transparency, weak accountability. Then next is inefficient and ineffective government. Inefficient and ineffective government. When we say that government is effective and efficient, which part we'll look into? When we say that a government is effective and government is efficient. Policy achieving. I'm asking separately, you're right. Effectivity क्या है और efficiency क्या है? Yes. How? Excellence.
Effectiveness is how much the government is concerned about a particular section of right, and efficiently is how well they are implementing their policy to address the problem.
Okay. How do you judge? Is it judged on the basis of whether you have reached the target or whether you have reached the target with the minimum resources? So वो दोनों अलग-अलग है. See, the thing is, effectivity, when we say that a particular government is effective, we see the target, we see the outcome, and we compare outcome with the target. Just take an example. Maternal mortality rate in India is, let's take 300. And we have kept the target of 100. If we are 120, then we can see that there is a effective implementation of policy because target is close to what we are, outcome is close to the target. But if the outcome remains 250, then it is ineffective. Effectivity has to be seen in the terms of the final goal. Whereas the efficiency is optimum use of resources. Okay, that how much resources you have spent in order to achieve this target. Okay, efficiency. Now, it's quite possible you want to create one flyover, but then you have spent some 1,000 crores for it, which otherwise could have been completed in 25 crore rupees. So whether meeting the target is also not enough. It should be made with a minimum possible resources or with the optimum utilization of resources. This point is all the more important in India because we are a third world country and there is a scarcity of resources. There is a scarcity of resources and there are many social obligations. So if you are spending more money, then it also means curtailing some other money in different sectors. Like you might cut in education and health and then achieve something else. So that is going to be a cross subsidization also. So what is important is with the minimum resources, you should be able to achieve the maximum outcome. Understood? Effectivity and efficiency. That is about, but the bad government is one who spend many resources and still not able to reach to the target. That is inefficient and ineffective government. Then the other problem is politicization of bureaucracy. Politicization of bureaucracy. Now this politicization of bureaucracy again has its, because bureaucrats are not autonomous, so they fear to take the decisions. And this politicization of bureaucracy is in fact a product of criminalization of politics. Criminalization of politics. How do you correlate these two things? What is criminalization of politics? Use of muscle power, money power. People with the criminal backgrounds are entering into the system. So obviously they do not follow the principles which are there to separate the permanent executives and the political executives, and therefore we see that the bureaucracy is politicized. Okay, so these two things are related, and criminalization of politics itself is because of we do not have the electoral reforms, effective electoral reforms in the system. So there is a structural problem. The next issue is red tape or red tapeism. What is red tape? Undue delay in public service delivery. Okay, red tape represents undue delay in public service delivery because of the complex bureaucratic procedures, because of the complex bureaucratic structure or procedure, complex laws, complex rules, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and so these are some structural problems. There's a problem also related with the attitude also. Attitude, apathetic attitude, which is leading status quo attitude, etc. Apathy or the status quo attitude. So sum total of all this is a bad governance or the malgovernance. So this is a contest you should always remember, because throughout the governance, these are the points which will be coming again and again. Misuse of the power. In fact, minimal public participation is also one of the aspect. So I hope you understood this, what is a malgovernance. Now against this contest, we are seeing what are the good governance. So first we will see, लिखें तो ये हो गया लिखना. You can write the philosophical underpinnings of good governance. Next title is philosophical underpinnings of good governance. Underpinning मतलब philosophical seeds of good governance sown by the different scholar in the past. Idea of good governance. Intellectual precursors of good governance. भावनाएं तब भी नहीं पहुंच रही तो क्या कैसे बताया जाए बाबा। इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि जो हम गुड गवर्नेंस इन कंटेम्प्रेरी टाइम पढ़ेंगे थोड़ी देर के बाद, that concept has emerged in recent times. The very word of good governance. Okay, let me take to the human rights का एक हमने स्टडी किया था. What is the humble beginning of human rights? That is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That is a formal beginning, but it does not mean that nobody before that has not talked about the human rights. We know that Immanuel Kant has talked about the dignity of human being, and dignity of human being reflected in the human rights. We know that John Stuart Mill has spoken about the liberty. That is also reflected. So same way, good governance, the concept which is recently popularized by the World Bank, they have given some specific characters of good governance. There are 8 points which we are going to do later. But we are saying that it's not just about when the World Bank stated something, the good governance came into being. The idea of the good governance, or the philosophical underpinnings, intellectual precursors, that those were there in the writings of different scholars. Okay, so write thoda sa ek line likhiye. That is idea of good governance. Idea of good governance is reflected in the writings and thinking of various scholars. The idea of good governance reflected in the writings and thinking of different scholars. Okay, so scholar number 1, first is the Kautilya. So, what is the name of his book? Arthashastra. Okay, so Kautilya in Arthashastra writes, asserts, Kautilya in his book Arthashastra writes, quote unquote likhiye, quote, in the happiness of subject lies the happiness of the king. In the happiness of the subject lies the happiness of the king. In the welfare of the subject, lies the welfare of his subject. Lies the welfare of the king. Okay, I'll repeat. In the happiness of the subject lies the happiness of the king. In the welfare of the subject lies the happiness of the king. So he is relating that king cannot be happy by keeping the subject unhappy. So his happiness is intrinsically linked with the happiness of the subject. So which point we are bringing here? That is a citizen-centric governance. So the focus of governance is citizen-centric. Okay. So the point that he is driving is citizen-centric governance. Okay. Implicit in his idea is the focus of the government is subject, that we in contemporary parallels call as a citizens. Okay. Second in his idea is there is a welfare nature of the state. Okay. Second is not just protecting the citizens, but also doing the welfare. Welfare of the citizen is also for the welfare of the people. So idea of the welfare state also we see the philosophical underpinnings in the Arthashastra. Also, Kautilya has in fact, the whole Arthashastra talks about the policy of statecraft, that how the king should rule. In this, he also spoken about the corruption. Okay, he extensively dealt with corruption. That is, what are the causes of corruption, what are the, the ill effects of corruption, how to tackle the corruption. Those points we are going to see later, but एक लाइन लिख लो यहाँ पे करप्शन के ऊपर की कौटिल्य और द अर्थशास्त्र ऑल्सो डील्स विथ अर्थशास्त्र ऑल्सो डील्स विथ issue of corruption Kautilya extensively discuss Kautilya has extensively discussed the causes of corruption, comma, ill effects, ill effects of corruption, and measures to tackle the corruption, So here is a scholar who in the 4th century BC is speaking about good governance that we are learning today. That's a philosophical underpinning. He is also talking about the corruption, how it brings dangers to the governance. So he is warning the king that if you turn blind eye towards the corruption, then there are lot many negative consequences, and even to an extent that the king will lose the legitimacy of governance in the eyes of public. Therefore, he should take effective measures against the corruption. This is what is we see the good governance also today. It is about the corruption-free governance. It is about the citizen-centric governance. Next, right, scholar, Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi concept of Swaraj. Second is Mahatma Gandhi, his concept of Swaraj. Okay. Swaraj means self-rule. Swaraj means self-rule. Self-rule. Gandhi favored grassroots democracy. He favored grassroots democracy over the centralized administration. He favored the grassroots democracy over the centralized administration. He suggested Panchayati Raj institution. As a mechanisms to achieve the goals of Swaraj. Panchayati Raj institution as a mechanism to achieve the goal of Swaraj. Swaraj बहुत सारे component है. We have seen in the other class. It has a political component, socio-economic component, cultural component, moral component. Okay, I hope you remember. So he has suggested democratic decentralization should happen. Gandhi has also linked concept of Swaraj with the empowerment of the people. He favored the people's participation. People's participation in decision-making process, which will bring the real empowerment. For the masses. Okay. Now, next, you can just write in continuation, next paragraph. His thoughts are reflected in Article 40 of Directive Principle of State Policy. His idea or his thoughts are reflected in Article 40. Article 40 के establishment of Panchayati Raj. Okay. Directive Principle of State Policy. When India started Panchayati Raj experiment? 1992 is a wrong answer. Yes, 58. 1992 constitutional this thing was given. It's in the state of Rajasthan, Nagaur. Okay. हाँ हाँ ठीक है. Yes, right, continuation. Post independence. Post independence. Post independence, India started the experiment of Panchayati Raj. Panchayati Raj. Post independence, India started with the experiment of Panchayati Raj. Since 1958, Nagaur लिखना है तो लिख सकते हैं. Nagaur in Rajasthan. This was the suggestion of Balwant Rai Mehta Committee. Okay, there was a community development program which was launched in 1953. तो उसको रिव्यू करने के लिए एक बलवंत राय मेहता, ये 52, ये बलवंत राय मेहता कमेटी ने बोला कि although the community development program was launched, but there is no institutional mechanism at the grassroots to bring the real participation and the development of the people. And real participation and development is not ensured until and unless people participate in the decision-making process. You see here, the word empowerment, when we say, empowerment is not about, let's talk about this woman empowerment. When we say that, when we say about women empowerment, social discrimination, we talk about the economic independence, but still the real empowerment is unless and until she is a part of decision-making process. The real empowerment is about decision-making. So in the same way, mere distribution of resources to the public through different programs and policies and the schemes is not sufficient to bring the real empowerment. For the real empowerment, participation in the decision-making is must. Okay. Now, right in continuation, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act has given the constitutional status to the Panchayati Raj system. 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act has given constitutional status to the Panchayati Raj system. And it has brought institutionalization of grassroots democracy. And thus it has brought the institutionalization. It has brought the institutionalization of grassroots democracy. Institutionalization of grassroots democracy. What does the word institutionalization mean? Institute पहले नहीं थे पंचायती राज के? वो तो बता दिया. Institutionalization. Yes, see, the thing is, when we call something institutionalized, it means that there are fixed norms, there are fixed standards, there is a regularity, the norm has to be followed, it is more legal. So one can predict that this is going to happen because that norm has been, that is called as the institutionalized. Repetitive, some norms, some procedures, some standardization, some legal backing, etc., etc. That is called institutionalization. Earlier, this Balwant Rai Mehta and Ashok Mehta, ये जो committee ने reforms बता रहे थे, but it was left to the whims of state to do it or not do it, and there was no uniform structure. Somewhere there was a 4-tier system, somewhere there are 3 tiers, somewhere there are 2-tier system, and elections were not regular. Reservation aspects was not again given a due importance, etc., etc. So in order to bring more uniformity in the administration throughout the length and breadth of the country, 73rd and 74th. So it has made it institutionalized. So this whole aspect is governance is not just about the distribution of resources. It's also about empowerment. And for the empowerment, people's participation in decision making is must. That is what is the thoughts of Gandhi. Okay. Next is you can write the Aristotle. Aristotle has classified different form of governments. Aristotle has classified different forms of government broadly into two categories. Based on the interest of ruling class. based upon the interest of ruling class, or in other words, likhiye, or in other words, in whose interest, in other words, it is the basis that in whose interest the governance is being carried out. In whose interest the governance is being carried out. Okay, two forms लिखा है ना उसमें कहीं पे? हाँ, two forms. The first is the legitimate government. First is the legitimate government. Is one, legitimate government is one where the ruling class work in the larger interest of masses or people. Where the ruling class work in the larger interest of masses or people. In bracket, ruled ones. Okay, ruling class and ruled one. So it is in the interest of ruled one, then obviously it is a legitimate government. Second is the perverted government. Second is perverted government. Perverted, P-E-R-V-E-R-T-E-D, perverted government. Perverted government is one where the ruling class are perpetuating their own interest. Where the ruling class are perpetuating their own interest. So in their own favor, if they are ruling, it is a perverted. In the people's interest, they are ruling, it's a legitimate. Now, can you link? Obviously, legitimate is the good governance and perverted is the bad governance. Okay, so these are the philosophical underpinnings of good governance. Now, write the 8 points of good governance, or 8 principles. New headline, like 8 points or principles. 8 principles of good governance as given by World Bank. Eight principles of good governance as given by the World Bank. You can make this diagram. Okay. थोड़ा सा बड़ा बनाओ, कंजूसी मत करिए. वहीं पे थोड़ा सा पेज बाकी रह गया, लिख दिया वहीं पे. Rule of law. Second is people's participation. Third is consensus orientation. Equity and inclusiveness. rule of law, people's participation, consensus orientation, equity and inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, responsive, effective and efficient. Effective and efficient. So this is citizen-centric governance. Is it citizen-centric or people-centric? Is simple and moral. Corruption-free. Which component is going to ensure corruption-free? Transparency. That's it? तो ऐसा है कि ये फुल पैकेज है, ठीक है? You cannot implement in bits and pieces unless and until you bring this idea holistically. You cannot eradicate or eliminate the corruption. So none of the point is, there is no watertight compartment. Okay, it's a homogeneous thing, and you have to implement the idea in its totality. So that's the points of good governance. Now we will discuss one by one. Okay, so the first right, rule of law. Rule of law. Yes, what is rule of law? Law governs the nation. What does it mean? Law is super. Everyone is bound by a supreme law. Or thoda sa law prevails. Who will not prevail? People will not prevail. What's the basic crux of the idea? No one is the above law, Article 14. Equality before law, equal protection of law. Set of rules, आगे. Parliament has made the law. We should abide by law made by Parliament. That's just a small part of rule of law. Pardon? हाँ, good point. क्या बोल बताया? King is to the law, law is to the king. Okay, fine. That's a close idea. But you see, the thing is here, the rule of law is not law talking about law made by Parliament. In fact, they are saying that Parliament should make the law on the basis of rule of law. Okay. See, the thing is, there is a contract in between the people and the political representative. When we created the state or the government, we have given them the power. But along with the power, we have given them the functions, that we are giving the power for only these specific functions. They don't have the, what is called as the absolute power nahi hai unke paas. Okay, this is a doctrine of limited power or limited governance. So the power is there, the function is fixed. Along with that, there are limitations. And if you cross the limitations, then there will be a punishment. Okay, it means that the days when the king used to rule, king would have absolute power to decide anything and everything. But in modern times, it does not happen. Even so-called king or the ruler of the country, okay, prime minister or the president, whoever the head is, they also have to abide by the basic contract, the contract between the public and the government. So in modern times, this contract is constitution. Okay. So in other words, rule of law is also known as constitutionalism, or it is also known as doctrine of limited government. Now, the limited government does not mean here, I'll make you right, okay? Limited government does not mean here the laissez-faire government. Minimum intervention and state has that there is a freedom. That's not the limited government. Limited government is you have a limited specified power, okay? What is the significance of this? Significance of this is it protects the people's right against the arbitrary use of the power. So on one hand side, it keeps the check on the arbitrary use of the power. On the other side, it upholds the rights of people, okay, in a democracy. Another thing about the rule of the power, rule of law is, in practice, rule of law is being there or not there is a function of how effectively the umpire of the country is. That because this is only we are writing in text that you should abide by the law, but there should be a neutral umpire who is going to restore back if the ruling class is arbitrarily using the power. That is a judiciary. So effectiveness of the judiciary is important because it is going to determine whether the rule of law is strong for that country or not. Judiciary is only one such institution. All the institutions of accountability which establish the check on the government or different organs of the government, be it a legislature or the judiciary, executive, they are going to maintain the rule of the land by upholding the spirit of constitution. Okay, so that's the rule of law. So write some aspect of rule of law. Rule of law means governance of the country is as per the rules and regulations. Governance of the country will be as per the rules and regulations. Will be as per the rules and regulations. These rules and regulations are codified in the Constitution in modern times. These rules and regulations are codified in the Constitution in modern time. Okay. Ruling class should abide by the Constitution. Abide by the Constitution. Okay. That's why rule of law is also known as constitutionalism. In the next line you can write rule of law protect the people from the arbitrary use of the power. Rule of law protect the people from the arbitrary use of the power by ruling class. Arbitrary use of the power by the ruling class. Okay. This rule of law also mean ruling class do not enjoy absolute power. Ruling class do not enjoy absolute power. They enjoy only, they have the power as mentioned in the Constitution. They have the power as mentioned in the Constitution. And such power comes up with responsibility and limitations. And such power comes with responsibility and limitations. Limitations. Therefore, the rule of law, is also termed as, is also known as doctrine of limited government. Doctrine of limited government. It means that you cannot take the life of the people. Doctrine of limited government. Strong and independent judiciary. Next point. Strong and independent. Strong and independent judiciary. Judiciary help in ensuring rule of law. Rule of law. Okay, so that is about it. So when we say that there is no rule of law, it means that there is a excessive power or the arbitrary power that is being used by the ruling class, and the spirit of constitution is not being followed. Like, take an example of this Arab Spring. Okay, the whole Arab Spring is to restore the rule of law, because there is a arbitrary use. There is a, even though constitution, see, there can be presence of constitution, but there is absence of rule of law. What does it mean? That you have written the constitution, but you are not following the spirit of constitution in the practice. That happens because there is a weak institution of accountability and transparency. That happens when there is no institutions of other institutions of accountability. People's participation is negligible. So these are the things which does not keep any deterrence on the check on the ruling class power. So that's about the rule of law. Next is the people's participation. Okay, people's participation. People's participation. Now, people's participation, why it is being taken as part of good governance? Okay. Okay, so we'll see that the people's participation started with the direct democracy, okay, where we have the Greek city-states and etc. Now, over a period of time, it has got converted into representative democracy. So here in representative democracy, what has happened? The role of the people is limited only to the election and voting. And this is a political representative. Now, political representative are expected to work in the larger interest of public. Now, why this has happened? Because city-state becomes the nation-state. So territorial expansion also has happened. Plus the complexity in the governments has also increased. So it was next to impossible to follow the direct democracy in practice. Therefore, we have come up with this model, that is election, and people are electing the political representative. Now again, we have started talking about bringing back the ethos of direct democracy through participatory democracy, or sometimes we call deliberative democracy. Now, why we are doing, what's wrong with this idea, and why we are not very happy with it? Yes, that is one reason. That, see, there is a complete absence, near complete absence of vigilance. As the Rousseau would put it, that Englishman get a freedom only once in a 5 year. Okay, that is on the day of election. Once the election is over, you are come under the scanner of the others. That others are going to make rule on your own self. Therefore, Rousseau favored the direct democracy. That in direct democracy, every day you are free to take your decision. But here, you are not free. And therefore, you do not put in vigilance. And since there is no vigilance, it gives the scope for misuse of power. And therefore, that is all the ill effects or maladministration happens. That is one reason. Any other reason? Okay, that is one. To continuously include the public aspirations. Yes, yes, that's true. Yes, that is. So why? What's the problem with that? That is what we are discussing. Yes, you are right. Absolutely. Hmm.
So people, political representative cannot visit the far-off places.
Okay. Fine, fine, fine. Essay also can be written. There is no doubt about it. See, the thing is, अबे स्वराज्य में क्या लिखा था? सेल्फ रूल. क्यों सेल्फ रूल रिक्वायर्ड है? Real empowerment is about participation into the decision making process. So it has two broader components. One is continuous vigilance on the government is required to ensure that the mandate that we have given, are they following and implementing the mandate or not? That continuous vigilance is required. Second thing is, forget about this vigilance. Let's assume for a while they are all men of integrity and they are following the mandate in letter and spirit. But we see that the real empowerment is not only about receiving the benefits from the government, it's also about taking part into the political process and being a part of decision making process also, so as to influence your choices. It cannot be influenced in once in a 5 years only. Understood? So therefore we are trying to bring the ethos of democracy into this. Now direct democracy तो it's not possible. Okay, कोई रामलीला मैदान ऐसा नहीं है कि 1 billion public will gather all the time for all the decision and every day. That's not possible only. तो यहाँ पे जो है we are bringing the ethos to the participatory democracy. So we are finding the new tools of democracy through which we can ensure the people's participation in the modern times. Can you tell what are the tools of participation in India? Citizen Charter is one, RTI. लोकपाल में कैसे पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं लोग? हाँ कैसे ओके लोकपाल फॉर्म हो गए? कहाँ पे है? Give us the address of Lokpal. We have lot many cases pending.
Public surveys which are conducted. Public surveys which are conducted.
Public survey, okay. Why? Right. Feedback mechanism. Whistle blowing. अरे सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट आपने ग्रास रूट डेमोक्रेसी अभी लिखवा है. ओके लोकल सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट शुड बी द फर्स्ट. RTI, सोशल ऑडिटिंग, ई गवर्नेंस में mygovernment.in, ओके सिटीजन टू गवर्नेंस लूप, social media, there are lot many newer tools. Civil society, हाँ civil society कैसे participate करती है? What are the tools of civil society's participation? Yes, civil society, active civil society through the NGOs and different mechanisms, they are participating. Okay, so right, people's participation के ऊपर कुछ लिखिए. People's participation is at the heart of, or the hallmark of good governance. People's participation is the hallmark. आर्चिस मत लिखिए, लग रहा है कोई हंस रहे हैं. ठीक है, हॉलमार्क ऑफ क्या लिखा है? हाँ, हॉलमार्क ऑफ गुड गवर्नेंस. हॉलमार्क ऑफ गुड गवर्नेंस. People's participation ensures, again right, people's participation ensures continuous vigilance on the government. People's participation ensures continuous vigilance on the government on one hand, and contributes for the empowerment of the people on the other, and contributes for the empowerment of the people on the other. Okay, in initial days, that is during the ancient time, that is in Greek city-states, democracy was, there was a direct democracy. Greek city-states, there was a direct democracy, which ensured continuous people's participation on everyday basis. Okay. In modern times, in modern times, we have witnessed model of representative democracy. Model of representative democracy. Wherein people's role in democracy is reduced to has been reduced to people's role in democracy has been reduced to election and voting, that too on the basis of liquor, caste, religion and money. उसमें भी कोई लॉजिक नहीं लगाना रहता है, हैंगओवर में जाके बटन दबा के आ जाओ. यस, नोबडी इज रैशनल. कास्ट कौन सी है देखो, रिलीजन कौन सा है देखो, रात में किसने पैसे दिए, दारू किसने पिलाई है, और क्रिमिनल बैकग्राउंड. These are the, so there is no substance in the democracy also. Okay, anyways, एक तो reduce कर दिया election, ठीक है. क्या लिखा है ये थोड़ा सा पढ़ना, ये last वाला sentence. Yes, have been reduced to the election and voting. Okay. This means there is no continuous vigilance over the functioning of government by the people. There is no continuous vigilance over the functioning of governance. The lack of vigilance led to misuse of the power. The lack of vigilance has led to misuse of power, or has led to created the scope for misuse of power. लिखो. Has led to मतलब हमने verdict pass कर दिया, ऐसे हो रहा है. It creates the scope for misuse of power. Okay. Now, in the next paragraph, against this context, there is a renewed interest. In bringing back ethos of direct democracy, ethos or the spirit of direct democracy in modern times. Okay, that is to, अगर लिखना है तो रिपीट हो जाएगा, बट लिख लो. That is to ensure continuous people's participation. This is to ensure continuous people's participation, which act as a check on the misuse of power and help in empowerment of the people. Okay, yes, significance बताया. Why at all we should bother about people's participation is the spirit. Now लिखिए tools of people's participation in modern times. Pardon? Switzerland has, but Switzerland, size of the Switzerland is very small. Okay, so वहाँ पे रामलीला मैदान है छोटा सा. The size of nation itself is very small. It's a very small country. So yes, it can be practiced. Like say for example, if today we will be reduced into the size of Goa, then we can bring the ethos of direct democracy. Again, in different counties also, there is this Singapore also in some decision making. Singapore में नहीं है. Okay, Singapore में in fact it's the other way. Lee Kuan Yew is a quote unquote dictator in democracy. There are very different theories in Singapore. So the point there is in case of we have to ensure the participation by some other way. So what are the tools of people's participation in the modern time? Tools of people's participation in the modern time. Now these are, we are going to use this also in accountability, but you can write and classify into two. थोड़ा सा ये कर लो, T diagram बना दो. Two parts, conventional tools and new tools, conventional tools, people's participation, conventional and non-conventional, or present form. Election obviously will be there. Second is pressure groups. Pressure groups or interest groups. In the new or non-conventional में present tools. As obviously the first one is Panchayati Raj institutions. Is the Panchayati Raj institution as a whole is a direct democracy? Panchayati Raj institution as a whole is a direct democracy. Is the Jilla Parishad direct democracy? Is the Gram Panchayat direct democracy? No. Gram Panchayat is the only institution which is absolutely direct is Gram Sabha. Okay, even the Gram Panchayat, literally speaking, is a representative democracy at the local level. But loosely we call it as a direct democracy. So इतना मत जाइए टेक्निकलिटी, ये पॉलिटी का नहीं है. यहाँ पे स्पिरिट आपको है कि ग्रास रूट डेमोक्रेसी में हो जाता है. That is, but otherwise you can write here the Gram Sabha. Second is RTI. We are going to deal separately in transparency. RTI as one of the, again, very, very potent tool of people's participation. Not only the people's participation, in fact, it has taken beyond the election because it ensures the continuous people's participation on everyday basis, making it difficult for ruling class, okay, use the misuse of power. Third is social audit. What is social audit? Yes, people themselves are auditing the things. We'll discuss again in different, like MG Narega. The beneficiaries themselves are auditing the account. Next is citizen charter. Citizen charter. Next, e-governance, that is particularly through the example you can write, that is mygovernment.in, etc. Okay, e-governance example बताया है, बहुत सारे apps वगैरह हैं. Next is social media. Social media, like different government ministries and departments are on Twitter handle. So you respond, okay, that my train is stopped here. So please, Mr. Railway Minister, okay, I have pulled the chain, but it is still not stopping. Okay, you got the Chinese model here, which is defective. Okay, बैठे बैठे क्या करोगे? Train रुक जाएगी तो. Anyways, that's about the social media. So people's participation is being ensured. Okay, now come to the consensus orientation. The next point. Consensus orientation. Yes, you want to ask something? No. Consensus orientation. एमईए में तो कुछ भी लिखा जा रहा है. यूक्रेन में मैं यहाँ पे बैठा हुआ हूँ, मुझे ये खो गया, वो खो गया. The whole government is running on a Twitter handle. Consensus orientation. Okay. Now see, in case of democracy, how the decisions are being made. There are two different ways of making the decision in democracy. One is obviously through the majority, and second is through the consensus. Now the majority means, like, obviously you just need a number. That's it. Okay, 1 plus more than 50. Now it can be 60, 40 also, 80, 20, 90, 10, etc. Now if you see majority in a heterogeneous country like India, you are excluding these people in one go. Now, interesting fact is this 51 in decision making is on the floor of the House or by the executive. But this 51 is also coming in India through the first pass post the system. जिसमें ये है कि उसमें भी 50% की guarantee necessity नहीं है. As somebody was talking about 31 and 69. Okay, so 31% से government बना है. And this government is itself is taking the decision on the basis of 51%. That is the requirement. in a country, heterogeneous country, where the different sections, they themselves are not, they'll never be in 51%, the minor, which are minor in number. So in such cases, when we go by the majority, you are technically and legally correct in taking the decision because we have the first past post the system. You have been elected and then you go by the 50%. But the good governance says that there should be a thrust on consensus building rather than just taking the decision on the basis of majority. Consensus building, it means that different section of the society, they might have different views and interest. So we have to take into account the perception or the interest of different sections. Okay, before making any policy and the law, we should try to build the consensus. You can again go for the majority in the final decision, but there should be an attempt, okay, by the government to take into account the different interest of different sections. Now, different section here, we are not just talking about minority and this thing. It can be an social and economically different section also, tribal community, Dalit community. It can be also the poor and rich and the middle class and etc. So different section and different decision making. Good governance says that maximum thrust should be on this. They say that this is your policy will be an effective also because you will not face the problem in implementation. Because before forming the policies, you have taken into account interest of different section to which they agree. And since they were agree, so there will be no problem in implementation of the decision. Otherwise, you make the policies and next day there will be a protest. All of your understanding, because section of the society would say that we have not been taken into account and our interests have not been at all articulated. Think of land acquisition bill. Okay, in fact, forget about 51. We have something called ordinance making power. So you don't require even it to be passed through the parliament also. So ordinance making, you make the ordinance, it means that there is no consensus that has been built. Now, technically speaking, literally speaking, consensus means 100% should agree. But here they are not talking about 100% as a procedure to make the decision. The word used is orientation. It means that you should maximum try to incorporate their viewpoints and you can go ahead with the decision making so that it will be a more and more acceptable. Understood this part? So consensus orientation, because when we see about the good governance is not about good of few people. It means that good of every single person in the society, and the consensus orientation will ensure that. So, right, consensus orientation. Consensus orientation represents or means consensus orientation represents building the consensus among the different section of the society, building the consensus among the different section of the society before building the consensus among the different section of the society to reach to the particular decision or policy. To reach to particular decision or a policy. Consensus building help in articulation of interest of different sections of the society, and it also helps in smooth implementation of decision. Smooth implementation of decisions. This is all the more important in country like India. This is all the more important in country like India. Why? where the society is a heterogeneous, where society is a heterogeneous, that is multi-ethnic, multicultural, multicultural, etc. मतलब बाकी सब all sorts of diversities. ठीक है. So consensus orientation should be followed. Again, it has two benefits. First is it will help in articulation of interest of different sections, or at least being sensitive if you are not articulating. कई बार देखो अपोजिशन जो पार्लियामेंट के बाहर आता है तो उनको माइक देते तो वो बोलता है कि वी हैव नॉट टेकन इनटू कॉन्फिडेंस. What does it mean? They also know that on the floor of the house, what matters is the number. Okay. The fact is, we have not even been consulted becomes all the more important. So, generally क्या होता है कि law जब बनता है तो एक ideal situation ये होनी चाहिए कि you should put that draft into the public domain. You invite all sorts of, which happens in many of the cases, and in some cases it's just a formal mechanism. जैसे लोकपाल बिल के टाइम में आपने देखा है कि जन लोकपाल ड्राफ्ट है, पीपल्स आर टेकिंग एन इंटरेस्ट इनटू द फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ द लॉ, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. सो दैट डेमोक्रेटिक कंसेंसस बिल्डिंग शुड हैपन बिफोर मेकिंग लॉ एंड पॉलिसी, so that there will be also a smooth sailing at the implementation level also, and nobody will be excluded from the policy making process. So that is the consensus orientation. Next is equity and inclusiveness. Equity and inclusiveness. Equity and inclusiveness. Yes, this aspect is related with the development and the growth when we develop. So we have already discussed a lot on this. This is part of socio-economic justice, that when you are developing, you should also take in the interest of the larger section of the society, and the development should not be a development of few. Okay, it should be a broad-based. That is, we generally call inclusive growth or inclusive development. And how inclusive growth? If we incorporate the principle of equity. What is an equity? That is, while distribution of the resources, it should be done on the basis of need. Okay, the one who is the vulnerable should get more resources as compared to the one who is the strongest one. So we have the progressive taxation system on one hand, and the subsidy and the, as Amartya Sen would put it, there is a capacity development on the other hand. Okay, so that's the thing. लिखना है क्या और वही कहानी है बहुत इक्विटी. हाँ ठीक है, नेक्स्ट लिखिए, खाली लिखिए डेवलपमेंट, भूल जाओगे, एक लाइन में लिखो डेवलपमेंट इज इक्वल टू, डेवलपमेंट शुड बी फॉर ऑल दिस सेक्शन. डेवलपमेंट should be broad based, that is for all the section including the weaker section, based upon the principle of inclusiveness and equity, social equity. Okay, next is transparency, accountability. We are going to do separately because we have a separate half an hour discussion. Come to the responsive. It is a responsive government. What is the meaning of responsive? Adhere to the consensus. Good. There is a difference in between responsibility and responsive. Here we are not talking about responsibility. Responsive is how much government is responding to the people's aspirations, their demands, their grievances. Are you apathetic towards their demands and grievances, or are you flexible enough to make the policy changes in your governance? Again, think of this Arab Spring. They are demanding something. They are protesting. They are asking that there should be a more democracy. There should be more changes which can curb the corruption. There should be more inclusive participation. These were the demands. That's being termed as Arab Spring. Now, what is the response of the different governments there? Response ranges from complete apathy, but they are not stopped at only an apathy. They have went on to use the coercive methods against the government, okay, in order to even kill the voices of the public. So it happens in all the democracies and the societies in different degrees. That so whether you are a good government or bad government, it determines on the basis of how much you respond to the public voices and aspirations. So that is a responsive. So you can write responsive government is one. Responsive government is one which responds to, which positively responds to, which positively responds to public opinion, their aspirations, their grievances, as against a rigid and apathetic government, as against a rigid and apathetic government, as against rigid and apathetic government, which is insensitive towards public opinion, demands and aspiration, and at times resort to use of the force, or coercion, coercion, to curb the voices, to curb the public voices. Sedition. Yes, that's nothing but the chilling effect that is being generated. Can you relate with the sedition law here? Okay. So a responsive government or a flexible government versus a rigid government or the completely not responding, apathetic government. Because see, the whole heart of the good governance is peoples are the sovereign. People are sovereign, and people should their concern should be voiced, their concern should be taken into account. Because after all, the whole system of democracy and the state has been created for the welfare of the people. Okay, so that's about the responsive government. Effective and efficient. Effective and efficient government is one. We have already discussed it. Effective and efficient government is one which effectively meets the target with the efficient use of resources. Minimum resources and maximum outcome, or optimal use of the resources. Okay, that is effective and efficient government. Okay, so these are all principles of good governance, and in each of your administration, you should incorporate these principles. Again, there can be any number of features, but this is a widely accepted World Bank's definitions of the good governance, which can incorporate a quite comprehensive principles of good governance. Now, next, right, transparency. सेपरेट छोटा सा टॉपिक, हाँ मतलब ठीक है, 7 पॉइंट कर दिया ट्रांसपेरेंसी, राइट. ऐसे ही लिखो, मतलब लगेगा कि 8 भी लिए हैं, नहीं तो बोलोगे कि 6 छोड़ दिया. Transparency. Yes, transparency. See, the thing is, we have already done some part in transparency. कहाँ पे देखा था? Nolan Committee's values. That values we have seen from point of view of a value of a civil servant. He should remain transparent. Here we are saying how the whole system can be transparent. So first, right, the literal meaning of transparency is openness. Literal meaning of transparency is openness. ओके, एक ऑनलाइन क्वेश्चन आया है, पढ़ लेता हूँ, थोड़ा सा ब्रेक भी हो जाएगा आपका. People's participation may lead to conflict on the basis of caste and class. Also, the voice of the few is heard based upon their class. So, how can we resolve this issue of people's participation in India? Yes, that's true. Because people's participation, when happens in a group, it happens on the basis of very parochial criteria. Okay, pressure groups I have mentioned somewhere. Okay, so the pressure groups in India are not very formed on the basis of rational criteria. They are more on the parochial criteria such as caste and the religion. Okay, Karni Sena. Okay, so आपको सुनना पड़ता है कि पद्मावती है, ठीक है, she was existing and yes, तो ऐसे हो जाता है वो. तो point is हाउ टू एंश्योर. दूसरा देखते हैं, क्लास वाला देखते हैं. दिस कास्ट. क्लास वाला क्या फंडा है कि जो फार्मर्स हैं उनका भी एक प्रेशर ग्रुप है, और कॉरपोरेट का फिक्की और सीआईआई और एसोचैम भी एक प्रेशर ग्रुप है. आई थिंक ऑफ द कैपेसिटी ऑफ द सीआईआई, फिक्की एंड एसोचैम टू इन्फ्लुएंस द प्राइम मिनिस्टर and the capacity of the farmer to influence the prime minister. ठीक है, किसको कहाँ अच्छे दिन मिलेंगे, that depends upon the capacity of different pressure groups. So how to resolve the problem? How to resolve the problem? We require a leadership which can balance the consensus building. Okay, it is for the leadership of the day to see and ensure that different section of the society are heard even when they are weak. Why we are always talking about people's welfare is important, और फिर specially the weaker section लिख रहे हैं. इससे मन नहीं भर रहा है क्या people's participation और people working? भर रहा है, हो सकता है. But we have to time and again focus on that when even if we create an equality of opportunity, weaker people will not have the capacity which requires a special attention. We need to have more empathy and compassion in order to understand those voices, okay, which are hitherto unheard, or those voices, in fact, there is no representative for them. Those voices are not getting articulated in democracy only. Okay, tribal people, they don't have very well educated, well off section of the society who can articulate their interests and put. It is for the, like Nehru has once said that if people cannot come to the democracy should reach to the people, that you have to listen to them. Second aspect is how to resolve the conflict. Does it mean that the participation should be avoided? No. What we require is a more maturity with respect to presenting our views and facts. That the more will be the rationality we can find out. See, the interesting fact of pressure groups in India is, let's take an example of workers groups. Now, worker group, pressure group की definition ही है कि different pressure groups are formed so that sectional interest also should get articulated into the government. Worker class है, farming class है, business class है, student union है, teachers union है. Now, the problem in India is this pressure group is not a homogeneous entity. Worker class जो है अलग अलग है. Okay, ITAC अलग है, INTAC अलग है, भारतीय किसान यूनियन अलग है. So, in fact, this homogeneous entity are also not able to represent their own group because they are divided on the party lines. Think of student union, ABVP for BJP, NSUI for the Congress, and CPI का अलग. हर SFI is different. So they are not even articulating the student interest in one go. Like जैसा है कि फीस कम करनी है या corporatization of the educational system should be prevented. They are not able to provide in entity because they are again the extended arm of the government. They are divided on the party lines. So what is required is a more maturity in the democracy wherein people can articulate their interests on the basis of rational criteria. People's participation is important, but it does not mean just because you have the number does not mean that your non-constitutional or unconstitutional demand will be met. In that regard, we have to bring a more maturity in the democracy. At the same time, we require empathy on part of the leaders also. At the same time, we require the law enforcement agency in order to curb those vices which does not have sanctity as per the constitutional values. At the same time, there is a need to protect those vices which are asking something on the basis of constitutional values. Understood? So people's participation is tough, particularly in case of traditional and transitional societies. Traditional and transitional societies में बहुत सारे shades they happens together, and therefore it becomes very difficult because you cannot use the tool also because it's a democracy. But the thing is, it also does not mean that unreasonable demands also will be entertained just because you are in number. But उसमें फिर election component comes in, and that becomes the important denominator because number is there. So government of the day would think that how it is going to affect their voting bank. That becomes again important. But these are the complexities, paradoxes of democracy जिसको बोलते हैं. This is a classical paradox. Yes. क्या लिखा है? Transparency. Yeah? Yes, literal meaning of transparency is openness. Okay. For the government to be transparent, there is a need of robust mechanism. There is a need of robust institutional mechanism. There is a need of robust institutional mechanism which can ensure openness in actual practice. Right, in the next. Right to Information Act is a legislation has an objective of creating open and transparent administrative system. Now, write RTI briefly. Objectives लिखना है हमें because we are more interested in discussing the principles. Objectives of RTI. These are written in the preamble of the Act. एक बार यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था preamble of RTI. लोगों को लगा कौन सा preamble है, एक preamble पता था. ठीक है. So objectives of RTI or the preamble is reflected in the preamble of the Act. So obviously the first will be to create transparency in the administration, to bring transparency in governance. Second, to create institutional mechanism of transparency in India. To create institutional mechanism of transparency in India. Now, थोड़ा सा उसी में लिख दो because we are not going to do separate act. तो institutional mechanism कुछ create हुआ है, that is a CIC, SIC, PIO and APIO. What is CIC? Chief Information Officer, State Information Commissioner, Chief Information Commission. So there has been an establishment of Central Information Commission also. Commission ही लिख दो, commission का commissioner. CIC, SIC, सेंट्रल इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन और कमिश्नर भी, कमीशन का हेड कमिश्नर, ठीक है, स्टेट इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर, and obviously the last man in the row is a PIO, that is a public information officer or assistant PIO, public information officer. Now, so you have not just said that transparency should be there, you have created a mechanism of transparency that people can go to the PIO and PIO has to give the information within 30 days. Okay, so that's the information. If it will not be granted, there is a appeal. Okay, two appeal are there, appeal 1 and appeal 2. appeal 1 जो है वो उसमें ही स्टेट की होगी, आपके लिए इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, जस्ट बता रहा हूँ. appeal 1 है कि PIO, जब आप PIO के पास जाएंगे, he will give you the information, and if you are not satisfied or if he has not given the information in 30 days, you can go to the first appeal. A second appeal fix है, that is CIC or SIC, that is a final appeal. CIC for if the issues related with the central government and SIC for the state government. So that's the appeal structure is also available. So institutional mechanism is created. Third, you can write ट्रांसपेरेंसी. ओके, ट्रांसपेरेंसी का ही है, बट इन्होंने क्या लिखा है यहाँ पे कि ट्रांसपेरेंसी विल एंश्योर द डीपनिंग ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी इन टू वेज. वन वे इज इट विल हेल्प इन रिड्यूसिंग द corruption, and in another way it is going to create what is called the informed citizenry. What is the informed citizenry mean? Yes, people are aware, जैसे कि when they okay, what they have done, how they have implemented, what is their track record, and should not go in hangover. Okay, that's the point. Informed citizenry, right? The transparency to deepen the democracy, to deepen the democracy, to deepen the democracy, through ensuring check on corruption on one hand, and creating the informed citizenry on the other hand, and creating the informed citizenry on the other hand. Okay, next, to ensure the accountability in the governance, So transparency, accountability, deepening of democracy, reduction of corruption, informed citizenry, these are all principles, and through bringing the institutional mechanism. Now, we know that this is one of the independent India's powerful act, okay, revolutionary act, and it has helped the people's empowerment and getting all sort of things on one hand, benefits to the people. At the same time, it has helped in exposing the corruption also and bringing more and more transparency into the system. So there has been a 10 years of working of RTI Act, but although this is one of the most revolutionary act, there are certain issues with respect to the implementation of RTI. So you can just give the small heading, that is the issues with respect to, or contemporary issues, or issues with respect to implementation of RTI. Issues with respect to implementation of RTI. Yes, is there any issue? Not all institutions are. Yes, what is the one of the most talked about institutions which is not? Political parties. Yes, political parties are not yet under the RTI. There is a difference between preaching and following. One must follow what one bridge. Yes, that's the first one. Or CBI. Okay, ठीक है, institution के नाम नहीं. और क्या क्या problems है implementation में? हाँ. Awareness नहीं है. Good. Yes. Still, masses are not aware of the tool of RTI. Yes.
Sir, if the information is false, if the information seeker is asking for vested interest or something,
Okay, frivolous information, malafide information. है ऐसा? नहीं है. ठीक है, बट ये प्रॉब्लम है कि people are taking the information for the malified purpose. Yes, very good. Yes, very nice. So section 8 है. Section 8 exception होना चाहिए, but वो बहुत बड़ा है. Exception should be exception. Exception should not be the rule. Okay, यहाँ पे rule, exception rule है और rule has become exception. There is a very big canvas that what is not under the ambit of RTI. Yes, most important thing आप नहीं बोल रहे हो. Victimization of RTI activist. Okay, so write the first one. Victimization of RTI activist. So we have seen the spirit of RTI. क्या लिखा था अभी कि RTI की information लेके आप you can bring the transparency into the governance by exposing the corruption. But the point is, the moment you get the information and expose it, you will be murdered, you will be targeted. Vapam scam, okay? A good example. This is a very popular one, but the thing is, in every city you see there is a very hard time for the RTI activists, be it a Pune, Indore, Assam, Noida. Okay, time and again we have seen recently in UP also. So the people died while exposing the information at the very local level we are talking about, at a district level also. This RTI activist, because see, the thing is, if you are a committed person, even at the decentralized level, RTI has become a tool, decentralized tool. That's the only tool in the present democracy where a committed citizen can bring the change, because he has to go and file an RTI. What the information will come, he has to file and expose the information. So he can, if you are committed and if you have a courage, this is a potent tool to expose the wrongs that is happening in the system. But the point is, most of the times, those people who are resorting to are having the very hard time, and therefore they are being victimized. Now, victimization has a deterrence impact. Okay, deterrence impact of not to use the RTI, and therefore the whole spirit of अब information लेके घर पे रखना ही है तो information क्यों लेगा कोई? ठीक है? That's no information. That's no intention ही नहीं है. So the point is, because of victimization, now there has been a atmosphere of pessimism, and people are having a fear even to use the tools of RTI. पहले तो ये था कि RTI फाइल करके आप एक्सपोज करने के बाद होता था. अब RTI फाइल करने में ही डर लगता है, क्योंकि वहाँ पे पता चल जाता है कि this person has filed the RTI on this particular thing. वहीं से कहानी चालू हो जाती है. So that has become a very serious. This is the single most important aspect of implementation of the RTI, that is the victimization of RTI activists. Now, second is absolutely diametrically opposite side of the picture. यहाँ पे कुछ एक लोग committed है, information लाके expose करना चाह रहे हैं, उनको जीने नहीं दे रहे हैं. दूसरा जो है information ले रहे हैं, information expose नहीं कर रहे, वो blackmail कर रहे हैं. ठीक है? That is a misuse of RTI. There is a completely opposite people, that is a misuse of RTI. Misuse of RTI. Here, so-called RTI activists, so-called RTI activists are misusing the RTI tool. Misusing the RTI tool to blackmail and harass. To blackmail and harass harass public functionaries. Public functionaries. In fact, it has its chilling impact that public functionaries are fearing to take the effective decisions because they will go through the harassment. Now there is some inherent flaw in this argument. Yes, very nice. What you are saying is government functionaries are saying that some of the people are taking the information and misusing it. Why this information is being misused? Because there is something dark, there is something fishy. If you are transparent, you have not done anything, let anybody take the information. How one can use the right information for the wrong purpose? Use ही नहीं कर सकता. It means that there is a something systemic flaw here, something wrong, something you want to try to hide, and now this information is being used for the wrong purpose. But yes, this is the half of the story. The other half is, yes, let's take an example of an honest officer like Ashok Khemka. ठीक है? Now when you take the decision taking करते समय आपके पास 4 options रह सकते हैं. ऐसा नहीं कि everything and anything exhaustively written. You take the decision on the basis of your experience, okay, discretion with available resources. तो आपने B चुन लिया या award कर दिया. So these people, now B you have gone through the transparent mechanism, but C और D ने जो है influence करने की कोशिश की थी लेकिन हो नहीं पाया उनसे कुछ. So what they are going to do is over a period of time they will continuously through the RTI so called agent, RTI agent रहते हैं, तो उनको बोलते कि आप इसके ऊपर ये RTI डाल दो, वो RTI डाल दो. So this is a sort of harassing the honest officer because they are not serving the पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी. तो उसको रिवेंज लेने के लिए भी ये RTI टूल बहुत बार यूज़ होता है इन ऑर्डर टू हैरास. आपको आंसर्स देने पड़ते हैं, आपको कंटिन्यूस मतलब 5-5 हज़ार RTI एप्लीकेशंस आर पेंडिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ योर टेबल, और सब में जो थोड़ा भी डिस्टेंस है तो आपको टैग किया जाएगा कि भाई आपने B को किया तो दिस सेक्शन ऑफ सोसाइटी के अगेंस्ट हो आप, ऐसे कलर्ड कर दिया जाएगा. सो दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ हैरासमेंट इज़ नॉट वेरी अनकॉमन. ओके, there are both the things. So rather than going into the detail, we have just simply wrote it. There is a misuse. Okay, there is a misuse with respect to the blackmailing. There is a misuse with respect to the yes, harassment. That is with the malified intention. So these people are using the RTI tool with the malified intention. The third issue is related with the exceptions to the RTI, or many issues are still out of the ambit of RTI. Exceptions to RTI. What is an exceptions to RTI mean? That is section 8. The issues which are falling in section 8 of Act. Issues those fall under the section 8 of Act. They fall out of the ambit of RTI. They fall under the ambit of RTI. They are not, they are out of the ambit. That they are not within the ambit. They are outside the ambit of RTI. They are exceptions. Now the notable exception, political parties, judicial appointment procedures. Okay, political parties is a very, very important concern because you see political funding, party funding is the single most important thing which perpetuates the corruption. If you remember in one of the class I said that there are no free coupons. Okay, if political party funding is done by the corporate, so corporate are going to receive the benefits. So till the time this funding is transparent, we cannot expect, because this logic that if you are using the funding for winning the election from illegitimate sources, so obviously nobody is giving a funding for you without any reasons. They want the spoil system, benefits of the spoil system to flow towards them. But this different agencies like ADR जो है, Association for Democratic Reform, this NGO says that 80% of the funding, more than 80% of the funding is non-transparent. We do not know the sources. So the point is, unless and until political parties are brought in under the ambit of RTI, and there is a transparency in funding of political parties, it's very difficult for us to foresee that the crony capitalism and things like this are going to go in near time. So that's an important exception. There is also another thing. This RTI, इसी में लिख सकते हो, चौथा पॉइंट लिखो. That is issue of RTI. इसमें और भी बहुत सारे issues है, जैसे vague words है, national security, very very vague words which can be any information can be easily interpreted as they are falling under the section 8. So there is a lot of vagueness. If you remember, we have discussed this in code of conduct में बताया था, when what is the implication of if something is written in a vague, okay, they are not precise. So that's also with the section 8 of RTI, and it gives a lot of scope for the government to deny the information to the public on the basis of this section 8. Now, right, RTI Act comes in conflict with Official Secret Act. RTI Act comes in conflict with, or many of the provisions comes in conflict with Official Secret Act. Now, नाम ही लिखा है देखो, Official Secret Act. ये कब का एक्ट है? Yes, 1923, ब्रिटिश के टाइम का एक्ट है. ब्रिटिशर्स ने एक्ट किस लिए बनाया था? To keep the system opaque and secret, so that the people will not come to know about what the government of the day is doing. It was expected that post-independence this act will do away with, or it will cease to exist. Post-independence it has not happened. Second hope was when the RTI was created, right to information, that we want to create a transparent regime, then since it will come conflict with, it will have no relevance. But again, the Official Secret Act continued. In RTI section 8 has been created for the specific purpose की कौन सी information नहीं देनी है, फिर भी वो act रखा हुआ है, so that any case as a conflict happen, you have to give the picture of we have the Official Secret Act in place, and therefore we cannot give the sensitive information, okay, which can jeopardize the sovereignty and the security and the territorial integrity of the country. This has become unimportant. In fact, there is a one line in the RTI statute, whenever there is a conflict in between the RTI and the Official Secret Act, the information should be released in the larger public interest if there is a conflict. In spite of all these things, we continue to see, because people are obviously not aware of this fact, and they say that Official Secret Act ke andar this information cannot be given. So either Official Secret Act obviously should come cease to exist, or at least the spirit which has been written in the RTI Act itself has to be followed. Okay, so hurdle is conflict in between official secret. One says information should be maintained, secrecy of the information, whereas the other says that information should be released. The next is issue with respect to implementation. They are more of a administrative. ब्रेक चाहिए क्या? नहीं, अभी 2-3 मिनट रुक जाए, ख़त्म होने में RTI फिनिश कर देते हैं. सो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ इसमें जो इश्यूज़ है, जैसे लिखे हुए हैं PIO है पर PIO है नहीं. डेटा आपको ऑनलाइन कलेक्ट करना है, बट देर इज़ ए इशू विद रिस्पेक्ट टू डेटा मैनेजमेंट, पेंडिंग ऑफ द केसेस. सो यू कैन राइट दैट organizational issues in implementation. Organizational issues in implementation. In many cases, PIOs are not appointed. फटाफट लिखिए, many cases PIOs are not appointed. PIOs are there, but they are not trained. They are not well trained. उनके पास जाओ तो बोलते कौन सा RTI है, क्या है, पता ही नहीं है, ऐसे टाइप से. Management of data. Okay, difficulty in management of data. A huge information is generated on the real-time basis. There's a difficulty. You have this in science, metadata analysis and the big data. This new thing is coming, big data analysis. That tool can be used for the management of the big data. Okay, next is pending of the cases. Pending of the cases with CIC and SIC. Pending, huge pending or backlog of cases with the CIC and SIC. 2-2.5 साल के लिए CIC थे ही नहीं, अभी आया है, ठीक है. Think of the head of the organization is not there, of the country's apex body. What will be the status? क्या लिखा है? CIC. Yes, pending of the cases. So these are the some of the institutional aspect which we have wrote in the statute, but we are not able to follow. The last is the lack of the awareness. Lack of the sufficient awareness with respect to the RTI. Lack of awareness on RTI. RTI. In fact, government has released a draft of rules 2016. Okay, rules क्या रहते हैं? कोई एक्ट है तो उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए रूल्स ला दें, नोटिफाई करने के बाद में, in order to facilitate the implementation of the act, because law cannot be completely giving all minute details. वो बोलेगा कि application form करो, तो application कैसा होगा, क्या होगा, these all aspects will be in the rule. So पहले एक rules already in place है. New government is bringing new draft. That is a draft 2016. Okay, this is a draft. This is more important for your other GS 1 or 2. I'm just giving you a brief what is the draft, because draft is going to be discussed and going to come into the public domain over a period of time. So just keep a tab on the current affairs, that what happens to this draft. Two interesting feature of this draft I'll tell. Okay, one interesting feature is once you make an appeal, now, जैसा है ना कि PIO अगर आप satisfy नहीं हो PIO से, तो आप अपील करो इसके अगेंस्ट, और फिर अपील करो, फर्स्ट अपील एंड द सेकेंड अपील. Now, in the present time, if you make an appeal, you cannot withdraw the appeal until and unless it takes to the logical conclusion, whatever the decision is. Now, the new draft says that a person who makes an appeal can write a letter and withdraw the appeal. Now, what can be the implication of this? What does it mean? Yes. So, why somebody who takes a lot of pain in putting an appeal would like to withdraw? Okay. So, there will be some pain for him. He will be forced to withdraw. Because earlier there was no provision, so what is the use of harassing the person? Now simply you see there is a possibility that he can withdraw, so there is a possibility of more and more harassment. Now the next interesting feature is, if unfortunately after making an appeal you die, then the appeal will automatically come to an end. Now what does it mean now? The appeal, you need not have to withdraw also. It will come to an natural death. Your death and is equal to the death of the appeal. Now, what does it mean? Simply you have to target the person. So that's why the RTI activist is saying that the new draft rules are the death knell to the RTI. It is going to completely kill the spirit of RTI. Okay, this will be a death knell. Death knell means final blow. Okay, complete blow to the RTI. Now last nail to the coffin. Okay, khatam. फिर बोले RTI. ठीक है, but these are the points which are going to come to the draft. So keep check on this also, that what sort of the drafts which emerges. Okay, so that's about the story of RTI and the issues with regard to the implementation. These issues are going to be remain there because 10 years of completion of RTI. Yes, we have talked because this is the most talked issue. Otherwise, RTI is one of the most revolutionary act which has really empowered. If Rahul Gandhi is right in one case, RTI has empowered the people. Okay, and it's a effective weapon in order to take the benefits from the system. Okay, that's for sure. but new reforms are required. It does not. एक और एक इशू है, दैट इज अ फ्रियोलस कंप्लेन वाला है, जो केस स्टडी भी पूछा हुआ था, लेकिन वो केस स्टडी में अलग पॉइंट्स आ सकते हैं. This is an alibi which is being used, that lot many frivolous cases are filed and therefore it is making difficult for the system. RAG study shows less than 1% of the cases are frivolous. Okay, so there is a saying, remedy should not be the worse than the disease. If you are going to incorporate something, in order to cope less than 1%, you are killing the 99% use of the RTI. So when somebody is using, what is the fact of the case that has also looked into? Okay, there is a RAG एक organization है, उन्होंने केस वो डाला हुआ है, less than 1% or 1% of only are the frivolous cases. So for 1% you cannot kill the complete RTI. Okay, so we'll take a break, and after 5 minutes or so we'll discuss accountability. Yes, you want to say something? No. पूछना है क्या कुछ? No. No.
टैक्स आने लगते हैं तुम जो बोल सके सारे बोल सके
Accountability. Okay, accountability.
Accountability. Literal meaning of accountability is answerability. Literal meaning of accountability is answerability. Answerability. Now see, the answerability is literal meaning, but whether the accountability of a administration and governance is weak and strong is determined on the basis of enforcement mechanism. If the enforcement mechanism is not strong, then accountability is weak. Okay, so right, first of all, right, government should function as per the mandate that is given to the as per the mandate given to them institutions of accountability ensures government observe the mandate, ensures that the government observe the mandate. A strong accountability requires strong enforcement mechanism. Strong accountability requires strong enforcement mechanism. Enforcement. Underline this word enforcement. Enforcement mechanism. In bracket, punitive action. Punitive. Punitive. Punitive is punishment. Punitive action. Okay. Now, see, the thing is importance of accountability जो बोलते हैं या फिर why we need an accountability. Again, you use that similar, which I have said in case of good governance. Mein. They say why this thing is there, that people, you give them the power, people pay the tax, and people deposit the trust into the government. Okay, so this is the government and this is the people. Now accountability will ensure there will not be a misuse of power, there will not be a misappropriation of fund, and people continue to have the trust in the government. Otherwise, people will lose the trust and there will be a loss of legitimacy in the eyes of the public. In the long run, it will create a situation of even the anarchy, where the people completely stop having a faith in the government. So accountability ensures, it may be the other way around also, the government becomes completely a dictator. Okay, and people also losing the faith in the democracy itself. So accountability will ensure that power is used for the right purpose, money is used, and the trust will continue to have. So this sort of relationship is required. That's why we require a strong accountability. Understood? Now write the mechanism of accountability. Mechanism of accountability. Mechanism of accountability. Now, mechanism of accountability, for our convenience, we are dividing into two broader aspects again. As one is called as the horizontal accountability, and the other one is the vertical. Okay. The mechanism of accountability can be divided into broadly two parts. One is horizontal. Horizontal, that is within the state institutional structure there is accountability, and vertical is accountability of the state institution towards the non-state or directly to the people. Horizontal is the mechanism within the institutions, mechanism within the system. Mechanism within the system. Now, mechanism within the system के दो parts है. One is the principle of checks and balance. One is principle of checks and balance between three organs of government. Okay, three organs of state. That is between the legislature, executive, and judiciary. That legislature, see, the thing is, executive are accountable to the parliament. That we see that the Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister is responsible to the lower house of parliament. It means that the lower house of the parliament can pass the no confidence motion. They can ask the question hour, 0 hour, short-term notice question, this question, that question. So they can hold the executives accountable by asking different questions and passing different motions, resolutions. In extreme cases for the ministers, censure motion, and for the government, no confidence motion. So this is through which they mentions the accountability. Also, legislature mentions through the parliamentary committees, Public Account Committee, Estimate Committee, Committee on Public Sector Undertaking. So through the committees also they maintain the accountability. In case of judiciary, so they have the power of judicial review of law and executive action. So anything which is against the spirit of constitution will be considered as null and void by the judiciary. Judiciary itself is accountable, or they are independent? They are accountable because there is a process of impeachment. Okay, but still there are many issues with respect to the accountability of the judiciary, because impeachment process is a all or none phenomena. And in extreme cases, how many people from the higher judiciary have been removed through the impeachment? No. Does it mean that there is no corruption? No. So the institutions of accountability are very weak, and therefore we have to also ensure the judicial accountability also. But here, judiciary we take as an independent organ, that is, we have seen in the rule of law, to ensure the rule of law. So that is about the principle of checks and balance. Second most important, we have dedicated institutions. That is, generally we take it as institutional accountability or institutions of accountability. इसी में है हॉरिजॉन्टल में. एक तो है कि स्टेट, देखो ऐसा है, स्टेट है, स्टेट के 3 पार्ट्स है, दैट इज लेजिस्लेचर, एग्जीक्यूटिव एंड जुडिशरी. देन देर आर सर्टन पार्ट्स विच आर हॉरिजॉन्टली, मतलब क्रिएटेड बाय द स्टेट इन ऑर्डर टू कीप एन आई ऑन देम. These are the institutions of accountability. Just tell me, what are the institutions? Yes. Or vigilance. Okay. So first we are going to write CVC and Lokpal, because these institutions, SVC, that is at the state level, and this is the Lok Ayukt, particularly related to maintaining the corruption. Okay. Misappropriation of fund. So first is CVC and the Lokpal. CVC, SVC and Lokpal. This will ensure the accountability with respect to misappropriation of fund. Okay. Corruption related matters, this will ensure the accountability. Second institution is CAG. CAG will ensure the financial accountability of the government. CAG ensures the financial accountability. Third, Election Commission, through the model code of conduct and ensuring the free and fair election. Any other institution? NHRC, National Human Rights Commission, that also ensures the accountability. And all statutory other institutions also, like National Commission on Women, Children, etc., etc. So they also, all, okay, all statutory commissions, they also ensures the accountability. In fact, इसमें judiciary भी independent. In fact, the judiciary comes at the top level, which ensures the all-around accountability or the misuse of the power through judicial review also, and through their appeals that is coming from the different, because that which comes with respect to misuse of power. Now, this is an institutional accountability. But the problem with this accountability, now we have so many institutions and still we are not able to bring the real-time accountability, or there is no strong accountability as we say. So the problem is autonomous functioning of this institution. That's a single most problem. You call it autonomous functioning of institutions, or you call it politicization of institutions. These are nothing but the extended arm of the government only. Because if you see the power of any institution, you have to see appointment. मतलब this, just for the sake of understanding, I'm writing this. Appointment कैसे होती है? इनका investigation जो wing है, वो कितना autonomous है? That is a functioning. You can say that removal, and for this organization where the finances are coming from. Now, if you see the 4, invariably for all the organization there is a problem, because most of the times the head of these institutions and the members are appointed by government of the day, central government, executives. Investigation wing, see, they can take up the case, like say for example either CVC and Lokpal, and then immediately they have to hand over the case to the CBI. CBI come under the MHA, and MHA again has a conflict of interest, because there we see the most of the times there is a politicization and nothing comes out of the investigation. Removal, the same story, because they have the authority to remove them, and the finances, that is the grant that has to be given to the ministry, human resources, technology, research, R&D, everything if you see. So it's completely the bodies which are dependent on the government of the day heavily, and therefore we see that there is no autonomous functioning. Because of this reason, we see that in India there is a notion that there is a the corruption attitude with respect to the corruption, that it is less risky and more rewarding affair. Less risky because accountability institutions are weak. More rewarding, obviously, the corruption will give you the short money within the shortest span of time. Now, let's take one random example. Just Lokpal क्यों आया है? When the CVC was existing, the Lokpal has come into being. What was the mandate? Is there any difference between the CVC and Lokpal? More of an independent body. Okay, good. How? Can you little bit elaborate on that? How it is an independent?
A bit of public participation
Good.
apart from organization.
Okay. In which level there is a public participation? You are right. Absolutely. That is a principle. Leader of opposition. See the yes. See philosophically, if you see the concept of Lokpal, then it's one of the very powerful concept. This concept has emerged in the Scandinavian countries. Okay, in Scandinavia, there is a concept of ombudsman. Okay, a concept of ombudsman. तो concept क्यों आया ये पहले ध्यान से रख लो. Except Lokpal, if you see all the institution, we're hiding the Lokpal for a while. These institutions are extended arm of the government. There is an essential conflict of interest because you are only appointing and they are becoming the judge for your own case. It's kind of that. Although they themselves are not, there is a third party, but the third party is directly working under the influence of the government. This is across the countries, there is a problem with respect to the institutions of accountability. Now, Scandinavian countries, obviously they are very high in the corruption perception index. So they have thought, now we no more believe in the institutions which have been created by state themselves to look into the their own this misuse of power and etc. So they thought that we don't require any institution. You keep on doing that. We will have the separate institution, and all the members are from the public only. And if anybody they observe that following the toe of the government, it's the people who are going to remove. It's the people who are going to appoint. It's the people who are going to remove, and they will work completely in the interest of people so as to make the government accountable. Now, this was the concept of an ombudsman. Ombudsman is something which is coming out of the people, for the people, of the people, and by the people, in a true democratic sense, which is going to. So, there is no conflict of interest here. In fact, the whole aspect of Lokpal is we have to work, and if you are not working, we will cease to exist. Now, this concept was popularized across the world, and obviously, the Lokpal, the name itself is Lok and Pal. Pal is the one who is keeping the vigilance, and Lok is something coming out of the people. Now, this was the philosophical concept, but the point is when we got the Lokpal, that is the Lokpal Act, which was passed by the UPA government. In this Lokpal, the institutional mechanism that is being created, there is a more participation again. There is a ratio 5:2 and 4:1 ratio है. So 4:1, 5 member elect करेंगे. Out of 5 members, 4 members are from the government again, okay, or from the मतलब for those. यहाँ पे केवल government नहीं है. So Lokpal is against whom? It's not just about the prime minister and executive. It is also about MPs. It is also about the higher bureaucracy. So those people are only dominating in selecting who should be the member of the Lokpal. And that is again the problem. Even when we got the institution, but the nature of institution remained the same as that of earlier institutions. All of you are understanding what's the problem with the Lokpal? That now at that point of time there was this Hanna Hazare protest going on. They have drafted one bill that is called as the Jan Lokpal bill. Now, in Jan Lokpal, there were provisions that the Jan Lokpal member will be appointed. Again, there will be in participation of the Prime Minister and leader of opposition as well as. But the other members who are going to decide who will be, their ratio was more. That 5:2, 7 members were there. So, out of 2 members were this Prime Minister and leader of opposition, but 5 members were independent, like Chief Justice of India, head of the CAG, head of Election Commission, who does not have any interest direct with the government. In fact, they also have the same interest. ये सब autonomous institutions के head को निकाला because they are the independent and they should form the Lokpal. But this draft was not agreed. Okay, where there was a Kapil Sibal and these people from the UPA. So they have formed something to give the public that we have made the Lokpal, but that Lokpal essentially is having this particular component where the ratio of the or those people who are in charge or against whom the complaint is to be made or complaint is to be unearthed, okay, they are having the domination. So this aspect, because this aspects will going to come over a period of time. In fact, this government has said a lot about the corruption, but it's almost 3.5 years now. But the institution of Lokpal, the poorest one also, that has also not taken off the ground, because there is an essential conflict of interest. The moment now, they are saying that leader of opposition is not there, but the point is that's again a lack of political interest, political will. Because if you see Land Acquisition Act, you have the ordinance making power, okay, in order to chip in different laws through the ordinance route. यहाँ पे तो parliament में भी floor of the house में Congress cannot say that we will put in hurdle that we will not let the bill pass. So it's completely, you have to table and it will on a very next day it will get passed. So where is the water going? Okay, it's completely a lack of political will. Recently Supreme Court has said something on the issue. What the Supreme Court has said? That this is not a serious issue. You should appoint the Lokpal as early as possible. Otherwise, we are going to constitute judicial activism. Then people will give the cry of judicial activism, but you have to see that 4 years after passing of the act has failed to take off the ground. Particularly when the government has come up with the mandate of the anti-corruption agenda. Now that's the irony. All of you are understanding. So what is important is the political will and the mandate of the Lokpal that has to be followed. अब इसमें इतना frustration हो गया है कि we are going towards the vertical accountability, because we are saying that the change is not going to come from that. So tools of vertical accountability. Tools of vertical accountability में क्या है? State and the government will be accountable to the directly to the people, or it's the other way around also, that people will ensure the accountability of the state and government, not the institutions, because the institutions are failing in adhering to the accountability of the government to ensure the accountability. Now here what are the tools of people or the society? These are nothing but, just now we have discussed some of the tools. तो वही tools हैं. Is the election tool of accountability? Yes. In fact, election is very blunt tool and very powerful tool. That is, उसमें reform का नहीं है. All or none principle. In fact, the political class, if they fear at all something, they fear the election. But the problem with the election is it comes only once in a 5 years. There is no continuous accountability that you can ensure. Okay, if you are not satisfied, wait for the 5 years. And it is a blunt tool. It means that you cannot suggest the piecemeal changes. That's also the point. So election is powerful. Second, we already discussed that is the pressure groups and the interest groups. Third, यहाँ पे आप और एक add कर सकते, that is a media. Okay, media is again a powerful tool of accountability. But the problem with the media here is, again, there is corporatization, fake news, paid news. We have seen different politicization, corporatization. So this again is getting compromised. So again, we are heading towards the new tools such as RTI is one of the again important tool. But इसमें problem क्या हो रहा है? Victimization of RTI activist हो रहा है यहाँ पे. ठीक है, election powerful tool है, लेकिन just now I have mentioned how the election in India is fought. Caste, religion, muscle, money, liquor. These are the 5 components. What is required is we need to empower the people so that the people can look through the mandate, what was the promised, what has happened actually on the ground, and then they go for the voting. But that's the point which is going to take a long time, because education of the voter, inculcating rationality, this all components requires a very long term, that education, socialization, etc. RTI, social audit, we will discuss social audit in, but just write social audit, citizen charter, social media. In fact, social media is a very powerful tool, which when the media is sold out, the social media is yes, emerging as a new faith. Okay. Now, social media में क्या है? You cannot buy every single person. Okay, and every single person has a weapon, and the person can expose. But again, यहाँ पे भी organized trolling culture आ रहा है. The moment you speak, your voices will be silenced. Character assassination, trolling, and etc. But still, the social media, you cannot stop the flow of the social media. Okay, you need to be very very strong. There is a Orwellian state. किसी class में मैंने बताया होगा कि in case of democracy, how they control the consent, okay, hegemony that they establish over the people. तो ये social media में एक voice है कि रियल टाइम का जो फ्लो है वो कंट्रोल नहीं हो सकता. ओके, सो दैट्स वेयर वी सी दैट न्यू होप. इनफैक्ट जो क्वेश्चन पूछा था इस ऐसे में, इट इज सेल्फ सेंट्रिक. नो, इट इज नॉट सेल्फ सेंट्रिक. यू कैन से दैट one side of the coin may be the self-centric, but the other side of the coin is it is in fact emerging as a new tool of mass mobilization. Okay, it is emerging as a new tool of transparency and accountability, where the government has to be answerable, because now every day what happens on the Twitter handles matter for a government a lot, because that is shaping the public opinion to an every day. So that's becoming an important tool. And then we have the e-governance tool, that is citizen to governance loop. We'll discuss in e-governance in detail. So ये सब हम अलग-अलग chapters में discuss करने वाले हैं. E-governance एक अलग chapter है. Citizen charter we are going to do separately. Social audit we will do now. RTI we have done. Okay. Apart from that, whistleblowing एक लिख लो. But उसमें भी थोड़े से problem है. That is a problem of protection of the whistleblower. But we'll do. So these are the chapters we have to deal subsequently. Whistleblowing, RTI, social audit, citizen charter, social media, e-governance, C2G loop. That is citizen to governance loop. Just write the social media. कितना time हुआ है? Case study भी discuss करनी. Social media, case study discuss करनी है, social media. नहीं, 5 मिनट discuss करना ही है दोनों में से. Case study मतलब हमारे पे कुछ काम ना लगे लिखने का. ठीक है. ठीक है, सोशल मीडिया कल कर लेते हैं. दिस विल स्टॉप हियर. केस स्टडी जो है असाइनमेंट विच वाज गिवन. सो द क्वेश्चन वाज विथ रिगार्ड टू दिस. ऑब्वियसली यू मस्ट हैव गॉट द रेफरेंस. राम रहीम वाला केस था. ओके, वेयर अ पर्टिकुलर, आधे लोगों ने पढ़ा ही नहीं होगा कौन सी केस स्टडी. क्या राम रहीम है. मैसेंजर ऑफ गॉड. नाम भी कैसे रखते थे, मैसेंजर ऑफ गॉड डायरेक्ट. आई एम द चूजन वन टू स्प्रेड द मैसेज. यस, द क्वेश्चन स्टेट्स, ये जो स्टोरी थी दैट इज MSG कोर्ट ने वेरिडिक्ट दिया है या फिर इट इज अबाउट टू कम आउट. So something who is a culprit. MSG अरे क्या नाम है, मैसेंजर ऑफ गॉड. ओके, हाँ, गुरमीत राम रहीम. ठीक है. अरे बस हो गया. मूवी देख के आया लग रहा है. हाँ, कल्ट culprit. But the point is because he's a cult obviously, so people are gathered. Okay, people from a specific group, social group obviously, are creating a chaos, or they are ready to go to any extent not to accept the verdict and to show the complete support to the person. Now in this context, a lot of chaos has happened, vandalization of property, loss of life, etc. That is, even the whole life got paralyzed. City got paralyzed, and a lot of loss happened to the public exchequer as well. So in this context, what is the responsibility of the civil servant? If you are a chief secretary, okay, how you would have managed the issue, and what are the steps that you are going to take to stop the things from happening in future? Yes, 1 or 2 answers briefly. Yes, anybody has wrote this answer? Nobody has written. Section 144, okay, prohibition orders. हाँ
the mobilization of the transport of interstate and cross-border transport to crack down the gathering of weapons
okay paramilitary
and media
state reserve force
regulation of media to show the
okay or emergency helpline number okay
high alert on police and ambulance.
okay anything else how to manage the mob how to manage mob huh? ओके तो और वो गुस्सा आ जाएंगे rationality cannot be imposed in a one day it will become a counterproductive persuasion में क्या लिखा था जो भी आपको पुश करना है ऐसे पुश करोगे तो थोड़ा सा प्यार से करना पड़ेगा नहीं तो वो काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव हाँ ठीक है हाँ वही हो गया ना हाँ ठीक है फाइन that's a long run okay you have to create how to manage the mob on a given point any other answer इंटरनेट स्टॉप कर देने का ठीक है ओके अनलॉफुल एक्टिविटीज एक्ट UAPA yes see the thing is yes any other answer how to manage the mob see the thing is you have to anticipate first of all see the first you should write what the civil servant is required what are the qualities okay this is a case study of crisis management in case of crisis management what are the values that comes into the picture for the civil servant you should introduce this way that is this is a case of crisis management where the group of the people are taking the law and order into their hands and something making an unjustifiable claim, unreasonable claims. So in such cases, what is required? There is a case of value crisis management. First and foremost thing that is required is emotional intelligence. Okay, that is a person must display the emotional intelligence that there should not be any knee-jerk reaction. Okay, you understand knee-jerk reaction? There should be an well-thought response versus a knee-jerk reaction. Knee-jerk reaction can be a counterproductive here. So one needs to take the stock of the situation properly and one need to respond in a well-planned manner rather than hastily responding or resorting to something which can become a counterproductive. Second thing is you yourself will be at, it's not only about emotional intelligence with respect to the others. You yourself will be under the tremendous stress because political class is saying something, media is saying something, people are expecting something, and this group of people are having a different notion. Because political class will try to also show that we are doing something, but they also do not try to leave this vote bank because they will not give the orders of cracking down on this because there will be an unwritten orders for you. You do not do this and that because that is going to affect their vote bank also. Why the crisis exacerbated? Because you allowed them to give vent to their feelings in spite of the fact that there is no basis, legal basis, rational basis in order to allow them to support or show the solidarity with someone who has been convicted by the law of the land. Now you should have, you had the time and you should have done it, but you have not done it because it is going to affect the vote bank. But for the civil servant or chief secretary, you will have a challenge because political class will again try to depict something and behind the curtain they will have the different orders to you. So you are in the crisis, you yourself are in the stress because there is a lot of conflicting things that is happening simultaneously, expectation of political class, mob, citizens, media and blame game. Those are all sort things. So एक paragraph आपको emotional intelligence के ऊपर डालना है. That is how emotional intelligence will help you at individual level in order to manage or de-stress yourself and take the more rational decision. And second is no knee-jerk reaction, but well-thought plan and the strategy. So that's the one thing. Second thing is, in this particular case, yes, section 144 you can resort to. Okay, there is nothing illegal about it. These are the, in fact, this section have been very much into the rule book or the law book so that you can use the prohibitory orders. Second thing is, now once the prohibitory orders are there, we see that this mob is unrelenting. What does it mean, unrelenting mob? Yes, they are not going to stop. Okay. So in such situation, obviously you have to deploy the paramilitary and the state reserve force so as to take the position. In case if the prohibitory orders are violated, then there should be a response. Again, it's not opening the fire directly on the guns and bullets and all that. Okay, there is a graded response. Okay, so there is a need to give very strict guidelines that firearm will not be opened because it will be very counterproductive. There is something called as standard operating procedures. So standard operating procedure must be there too. Now, how to quell the crowd? How to quell the crowd? You have to go for some non-combatant techniques, or you can say that non-lethal or less lethal techniques. So you have to use the tear gas. You can use the water cannon. You can use the rubber bullet. Okay, rubber bullets. Tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets in order to disperse the crowd. These are the non-lethal things. In fact, in case of Kashmir, there is a new bullet which has come into pellet guns. But now the report says that the pellet guns are so-called not lethal. They are the lethal and they have been counterproductive. So any such sort of things should not be followed, which can in fact exacerbate the crisis. Tear gas hai, water gas hai, rubber bullets hai, and firing in the air. In the last again, firing even that is should not be there. But if at all required, then it is also firing in the air. Okay, so as to disperse the cloud. So you have all non-lethal techniques which are used, which can be used, and you can make arrest also, some arrest section of the society if at all they're causing damage. And third thing is whom they would listen to. Yes, Baba Rahim himself. Okay, क्या नाम है? बाबा रहीम है, हाँ जो ही है. So you have to tell the, obviously अगर आपने देखा होगा तो उसने एक ट्वीट किया था कि प्लीज स्टे क्वाइट, एंड ये तो तुम्हें लग रहा है कि उसने खुद से किया होगा, हाँ मतलब लिखा भी होगा तो. द गवर्नमेंट हैव टू मेक एन रिक्वेस्ट दैट एवरीथिंग okay should be within the ambit of the law. Okay, should not cause the chaos. Okay, so their leader himself, जैसे बोलते हैं कि जब भी ये मॉब होता है तो आपको पहले सबसे पहले रिंग लीडर्स जो रहते हैं, because mob is listening or being guided by one or two person who is leading the mob. So if शांत हो जाओ तो शांत हो गए, ठाकरे ने हाथ उठाया बोल दिया बस तो बस, जलाओ बोल लो जलाओ, ठीक है. तो ऐसा रहता है. रिंग लीडर्स, you have to find out the ring leaders, and when the ring leader make the appeal, so in this case obviously the concerned person, you have to ask him to make an appeal. Obviously you have to force him for sure to make the appeal. So that's also is one of the things. At the same time, emergency services should be kept ready. If at all the damage, you cannot expect that I am using tear gas, nothing is going to happen. पूरा मैंने visualize videograph करके रखा है दिमाग में, ठीक है. वहाँ पे चालू हो जाएगा, कहाँ से क्या आ रहा है पता भी नहीं चलेगा. No prohibitory orders, nothing. So you have to minimize the damage situation है. Minimize the damage. Police, emergency services, police है, helpline है, ambulances है, so that if at all any untoward incidences happen, there should be a minimization of damage. Okay, and again media, there should be a press conference, or you should talk to the media. You should talk to the media in order to tell that the situation is under control. Okay, and the common man or the innocent public should have no reason to fear. Otherwise, there is a fear, and there is rumors are also spread very fast in such. And today is the day of the social media again. तो उसमें रूमर्स बहुत ज़्यादा स्प्रेड होते हैं, इतना जलाया उतना जलाया, ये काउंटर हो गया. सो देयर इज़ अ सेंस ऑफ इनसिक्योरिटी. सो यू शुड एड्रेस. तो ये ऐसे नहीं बोलते सिचुएशन इज अंडर कंट्रोल, स्टैंडर्ड है इन ऑर्डर टू कीप द पीपल secure that the situation is. So you should act like a leader, okay, and you should take care of different sorts of things. Okay, what can be done in future? थोड़ा सा long term measures आपको लिखने हैं. Okay, that's not a difficult thing. कि ये जो सभी पहले तो ये है कि भाई सोशलाइजेशन होना चाहिए, प्रोहिबिटरी ऑर्डर्स, आपको ये सब पता है ऐसे होने वाला है, तो यू शुड क्रिएट मोर प्रिवेंटिव मैकेनिज्म्स कि ऐसी सिचुएशन कभी भी आएगी तो हाउ टू मैनेज द कंट्रोल. तो उसके जो है पूरे गाइडलाइंस बनानी है, उन गाइडलाइंस को इम्प्लीमेंट करना है. सेकेंड इज you have to stop supporting these people because in a way there is always a sense that the government is also on the side, because in this case also if you have seen before the verdict all the politician has paid the visit to the person, okay, asked for the political support. This yes, इस इंसिडेंट के पहले 15 दिन पहले 10-15 दिन पहले तो ऐसे हुआ था. तो what you are trying to create that constituency where the people have started considering them as a god. There is no again the rationality into the masses. So वो long term processes है. Second is आपको एक standard rules and regulations बनाने पड़ेंगे, policies बनानी पड़ेंगे, law beef up करना पड़ेगा. सबसे important है इसमें जो लोग आप capture कर रहे हैं उनको convert करना पड़ेगा so that there will be fear. बहुत बार क्या हो जाता है, इनको कुछ नहीं किया जाता. सो पीपल टेक दिस थिंग फॉर ग्रांटेड दैट नथिंग इज गोइंग टू हैपन. सो वही बात है, दैट इज वन इज द अकाउंटेबिलिटी इंस्टीट्यूशन शुड बी मेड वेरी स्ट्रांग, दैट लॉ शुड बी stringent, effective implementation of law, deterrence should be created, and in the long run that the values should be inculcated, that what is rational and what is irrational, whom to support and not to support. So these kind of the things should be imbibed in the long run, and there should be a clear-cut strategy that how to control the mob. And ये जो बहुत बार क्या होता है, paramilitary कभी आ रही है, everybody is waiting for orders to come. There is a lot of chaos. Okay, जैसे पठानकोट अटैक हुआ था, that's a classical case. All 4-5 forces are there, and nobody is knowing when the order is going to come. And that is when after post operation also we have lost 3-4 major general. I think one of the has been lost after the combing operation may lost. Okay. So think of the kind of the situation that can lead to. So that sort of attitude of pessimism will be there in the public. तो वो एक आपको कर्व करना आना चाहिए. Okay, so that is how we have to manage the things.